Today, we are reviewing a promotional script that highlights the vast, crazy numbers in our universe, from billions of trees to quadrillions of ants, ultimately leading to the message that there is only one you.
Right.
We are analyzing this material strictly through the lens of adjusting the content for a kindergarten audience, using simple, easily understandable vocabulary. So let's immediately look at how these massive mathematical concepts land with young readers.
Well, the sheer scale of the mathematical terminology creates a cognitive disconnect for a kindergarten audience.
Yeah,
The weakness here is that the script relies heavily on literal, highly abstract terms. I mean, we're looking at phrases like 370 billion gallons of water
right.
and, 10 quadrillion ants or 1,620 trillion raindrops.
It's a lot.
Exactly. For a 4 to 6-year-old child, who is typically just mastering the concept of counting to 100, these massive words hold absolutely no physical meaning.
Yeah, they're just going to hit a wall.
Right. When a child hears the word quadrillion, they process it the exact same way they process a completely made-up nonsense word.
Like a blank stare?
Precisely. The intended sense of awe is entirely lost in numerical confusion because, well, their developing brains simply cannot render that level of mathematical abstraction into a mental image.
So a key theme running through this material seems to be the author's reliance on these staggeringly huge figures to evoke a sense of wonder.
Yeah, that's definitely the intent.
Like the writer is actively trying to blow the reader's mind by highlighting exactly how many raindrops or how many trees exist in our world.
Mm-hmm.
And I completely understand the cognitive disconnect you are pointing out. Because obviously, a kindergartner is not doing complex calculus.
No, definitely not.
But I have to push back a little on the idea of completely removing these numbers. I mean, is there a risk that focusing solely on simplifying the vocabulary might accidentally remove the crazy scale the author intended? It feels a bit like taking the magic out of a magic trick by explaining how the illusion works behind the scenes. Like, if we strip away the massive scale, do we lose the very premise of the piece?
That's fascinating. What are the potential limitations or counterarguments to that idea? Because it is a highly relevant concern. We certainly do not want to diminish the wonder or make the world feel small.
Exactly. We want to keep that awe.
But we have to understand that for toddlers, scale is processed spatially, not numerically.
Oh, okay.
The counterargument to keeping the large numbers is that the magic is actually preserved and even amplified when a child can vividly picture the overwhelming physical size of the comparison.
I see what you mean.
Yeah, to a 5-year-old, a physical space that stretches beyond their immediate visual field is far more magical and, far more understandable than the word trillion.
That distinction between spatial processing and numerical processing is really the crux of the issue here, isn't it?
It really is.
Like, a child knows what their bedroom looks like. They know what their local playground looks like.
Right, they have that mental map.
And if you describe a physical quantity that overflows past the boundaries of their playground, they get it. It feels enormous to them.
Yeah.
But if you just give them a string of zeros, it is just white noise. It doesn't stretch their imagination because it doesn't give their imagination any familiar building blocks to work with.
Exactly. You cannot build a massive structure in a child's mind if you are using invisible bricks.
Invisible bricks, I love that.
So the suggestion here is to translate these giant abstract numbers into relatable physical comparisons.
Okay.
We need to emphasize the concept of more than you can count, using simple, highly visual vocabulary that a kindergartner can immediately map to their lived environment.
I sort of get the theory, but I'm trying to picture what this actually looks like on the page without losing the author's original intent.
Sure.
Instead of saying 10 quadrillion ants, what are some concrete examples of what the author should actually write?
Well, if we look for a concrete way to apply this, let's take the script's line about 370 billion gallons of water.
Okay.
Instead of that clinical scientific measurement, change it to a spatial comparison using simple vocabulary. You could say, there is enough water in the oceans to fill every single bathtub in the whole wide world.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Right? A kindergartner knows exactly what a bathtub is. Imagining every single bathtub in the world overflowing creates an immediate, staggering mental image for them.
It's super vivid.
Exactly. Similarly for the ants, Instead of 10 quadrillion, try something like, there are more ants crawling in the dirt than there are leaves on a giant tree.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. They have all looked up at a leafy tree and felt overwhelmed by the sheer number of leaves.
I really love the bathtub imagery because it is instantly recognizable. It takes this cold scientific measurement of oceanic volume and turns it into something splashing and highly visible in the child's mind.
Precisely. And I should note, those are just a few out of all the possible ways of solving this problem.
Right.
You could talk about stacking building blocks to the moon, or, filling their school with sand. The specific analogy doesn't matter as long as it replaces the mathematics with immersive, spatial vocabulary that they already understand.
Just giving them something physical.
Right. By anchoring the vastness to a recognizable object, you unlock the exact sense of awe the author is aiming for.
Now, if we successfully get them to picture that overflowing bathtub or that giant tree full of leaves, we have to think about how long we are letting them look at that image before we yank them away to the next one.
Oh, definitely.
Which brings us to the pacing. Reading through the text, we get an incredibly rapid sequence of these concepts.
It's very fast.
Yeah, we start looking at the stars, then immediately splash into the water, bump into the trees, run into city people, look down at the ants, look up at a thunderstorm, chase some rabbits, and suddenly we are staring at a tall building.
It's a lot to take in.
It really is. Reading this feels a bit like running a kindergartner through a massive art museum. You are forcing them to look at every single painting for exactly 1 second, but they don't get to appreciate any of the art before being dragged to the next wing.
The rapid succession of disconnected environments risks sensory overload, preventing young listeners from fully engaging with the wonder of the world.
Sensory overload, absolutely.
The weakness in this structure is that the text jumps erratically from the sky, down to the ocean, over to the forest, into dense urban cities, back up into the weather systems.
It's exhausting.
Down to the animals, and then over to human architecture, all without offering any conceptual breathing room.
Yeah, zero time to process.
It is a list-like pacing that moves entirely too fast for a young child's imagination. You see, when a child hears a story, their brain is essentially rendering a movie scene based on your text. If you switch the setting before they have finished building the previous mental set, the scene simply collapses.
It is essentially an issue of cognitive whiplash. I mean, in an adult text, rapid-fire lists can actually create a really great staccato rhythm. It builds momentum.
Yeah, for adults it works well.
But for a kindergartner, every new noun is a heavy cognitive lift. They have to fetch the concept of a thunderstorm from their memory, place it in the scene, and add the raindrops.
Right.
If you immediately throw rabbits at them a split second later, the thunderstorm just evaporates. They are constantly playing catch-up with the narrator, trying to build the scene, which means they never actually get to experience the awe.
Exactly. That makes sense, but could the evidence also support a different conclusion? Like maybe the author just wants to show the sheer chaos and variety of the universe?
Oh, that could be it.
I think that might be the author's intent here. However, even if the goal is to show variety, awe requires a moment of lingering. You cannot be in awe of something you barely had time to process.
True, you have to actually look at it.
The cognitive load of switching environments 7 or 8 times in a single paragraph is simply too high for a young audience.
I can see what you're going for here. Let's see how we can strengthen this flow. If the weakness is this erratic jumping that causes sensory overload, what is the actual suggestion for the author?
Well,
Like, how do we restructure the flow to give the reader that necessary breathing room without just padding the script with filler words?
the suggestion is to group related concepts together into distinct, cohesive scenes and deliberately slow down the pacing by using simple transitional phrases that actively guide the child's focus.
Okay, so grouping things.
Right. By organizing the chaos into a logical, spatial layout. For instance, grouping all the things that belong in the sky together and grouping all the things that belong on the ground together, we drastically reduce the cognitive load.
I can see how creating those distinct scenes would act as an anchor for their imagination. It gives them a stable stage to place the props on.
Exactly.
How do we actually write that transition, though? Walk me through some concrete examples of how the author could rebuild this specific sequence.
Sure. For a concrete example, you separate the sky facts from the ground facts. You could start with a simple grounding transition like, look way up at the sky. There are stars and giant thunderstorms filled with raindrops.
Oh, I like that directive phrase, look way up.
Then, The crucial part, you build in a deliberate pause. You let them look at that imaginary sky.
Yeah.
Then you use another simple transition, like, now look down at the dirt. There are giant forests full of trees and tiny ants crawling around. This approach allows the child to follow along visually and conceptually.
That structural change does so much heavy lifting. It not only slows down the pacing, but it actually mimics the physical actions of a child.
It really does.
Look up. Now look down. It turns the reading experience into a physical, interactive moment. It gives the squirmy reader a physical direction to look, even if it's just in their imagination.
Exactly. And again, this is just one of many ways to group the information.
Right.
An author could group the facts by colors or by things that make noise versus things that are quiet. But the core concept remains. You must group the items conceptually so the child's brain doesn't have to rebuild the environment from scratch with every single sentence.
Yeah, it grounds them.
It changes the script from a chaotic list of trivia into a guided tour of their own environment.
Now, having addressed the vocabulary of the massive numbers and the pacing of how those numbers are delivered, we have to look at the final destination of this script.
The ending is really important here.
The entire narrative is designed to funnel down from these vast, unimaginable quantities to the singularity of the reader. Let's look closely at the section discussing the final transition.
Let's do it.
The text reads, "The tallest building is 2,722 feet tall. But can I tell you one more secret? Among the 100 billion trillion stars, there's only one of you."
Yeah, the transition to the final emotional core lacks a relatable human-scale anchor to make the conclusion resonate with a young child.
So the jump is just too harsh.
The fundamental weakness we are dealing with here is that jumping straight from a rigid, mechanical fact about a building being 2,722 feet tall to an intimate, emotional secret about the reader is deeply jarring.
It's like hitting a wall.
Exactly. A skyscraper's height is cold architectural trivia. It is entirely inorganic. It has absolutely no emotional connection to the core message of the piece, which is the child's unique, precious place in this vast universe.
Right.
When you pivot from concrete steel straight down to the warmth of a child's individuality, the narrative bridge simply collapses.
It feels like an accidental collision of two entirely different books. Like one book is an encyclopedia of world records, and the other is a heartfelt bedtime story.
Collision is the perfect word for it.
The contrast is incredibly stark. You have the clinical precision of 2,722 feet grinding directly against the whispered intimacy of, "Can I tell you one more secret?" There is absolutely no emotional momentum carrying the reader from the building to the child.
Right, the child is left thinking about construction equipment, not their own intrinsic value.
Yeah, exactly.
For a climax to work in children's literature, there needs to be a funneling effect. You want to start wide with the macro universe, narrow down to the earth, narrow down to the child's immediate environment, and then land softly on the child themselves.
And the building messes that up.
The building interrupts that funnel. It acts as a concrete wall. It forces the child's brain to process a cold, hard fact. Right at the exact moment, their brain needs to be opening up to an emotional truth.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
We end bedtime stories on soft notes because the goal is comfort and security. A skyscraper wakes the brain up with trivia rather than soothing it with resonance.
So, if the architectural statistic is acting as a wall that blocks that emotional funnel, what is the specific suggestion to fix this? How can the author rewrite this bridge to ensure that the final message lands softly?
Well, my suggestion is to replace that final factual statistic about the building with something much closer to the child's physical or emotional world, utilizing very simple vocabulary.
Okay, so swapping out the building completely.
Yes, we need to create a natural, comforting, and organic bridge to the ending message. The concept, right before "there's only one of you," needs to feel warm, alive, and distinctly human, so the transition feels like a gentle embrace rather than a sudden change of subject.
That makes total sense. We need to replace the cold steel with something warm. What are some concrete examples of what that warm, organic bridge actually looks like on the page?
For concrete examples, the author should completely remove the line about the tallest building. Instead, end the sequence of vast numbers with something intimate.
Like what kind of intimate?
You could use a line like, there are millions of happy smiles in the world every single day. Or, out of all the kids playing in all the parks today. From there, you pivot smoothly to, but among all those stars, there is only one you.
That is a brilliant pivot. Out of all the kids playing today, it immediately creates a community, it establishes a human scale, and it makes the final isolation of there is only one you feel incredibly special rather than arbitrary.
And those are just a couple of possibilities out of many. You could talk about the number of bedtime stories being read right now, or the number of hugs being given.
Oh, I like the hugs one.
Right? By using smiles or bedtime stories, you anchor the vastness of the universe directly into the child's lived emotional reality. It prepares their heart for the final message, making the realization that they are unique feel profound and deeply comforting.
This has been an incredibly productive discussion on how to tailor complex concepts for kindergarten audience.
It really has.
To quickly recap the main points of today's critique, first, to fix the cognitive disconnect of massive numbers. Translate abstract mathematical vocabulary like trillions and quadrillions into highly visual spatial comparisons, such as filling the world with bathtubs.
Right, keep it physical.
Second, to prevent sensory overload and fix the erratic pacing, group the scenes conceptually, separating the sky elements from the ground elements to give the child time to visualize the environment.
Slower pacing is key.
Finally, to ensure the emotional climax resonates, replace the cold architectural statistic of the tallest building with a relatable, human-scale image, like smiles or children playing.
End on a warm note.
We warmly invite the listener to apply these actionable suggestions, simplify the vocabulary to match the cognitive realities of their audience, and submit the revised work back to us for another critique. Until next time.